for presentations from each of the remaining legislators, and then we'll take questions, okay?
Well, thanks, John, and I'm going to keep it short because I know the most important part of these conversations is us listening to you, not the other way around, because you can see what we do from just reading what we do in our newsletters and such, and I think a lot of the themes that you'll hear from us, Medicaid expansion, et cetera, are important. But I'll just flag a couple of things that I've been doing just in my own capacity so that you'll have a better breadth of issues that we worked on. This year, unlike other years, I've been focused on working on other people's bills more than I have working on my own. The reason is because the Speaker of the House appointed me to 4 committees now. I used to be on 2, now I'm 3, and then now I'm on 4. The 4th committee I was added to this year is the Courts of Justice Committee, and many of you know that the Courts of Justice has a civil and a criminal component to it. That committee, among the 14 or 15 standing committees that we have in the General Assembly, receives almost a quarter of all the bills that we introduce. And so we spend hours and hours and hours, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday afternoons for many, many hours working on all these bills that come through that have criminal justice issues or civil litigation or estates and trusts and all kinds of complex issues. Some of those issues are issues that you work on. And one of the bills that I just want to highlight is I was looking through your legislative agenda for the year. The ban-the-box bill that Delegate Kubica, a good friend of mine from Alexandria, introduced this year, which would prohibit asking the question about criminal background on your application, at least the initial one. Of course, there are some jobs that, for criminal justice issues and sensitivity, you have to ask that question, but you shouldn't do so at the initial stage where you can't even apply for a job, let alone have an interview because of whatever criminal background you might have. And so that bill, unfortunately, was carried over to next year, but I was part of that conversation. It's certainly an issue that people, I think, are sympathetic to. It's just a matter of how do we implement that. So bills like that came through the Courts of Justice Committee this year. And just incidentally, I know many of our friends who are supportive of you in the General Assembly. We have Vivian Watts, who couldn't be here today. Charnel Herring, who's also a big champion of your issues, who couldn't be here today. Pat Hope, who's we met with, and myself are the Northern Virginia members of the Courts of Justice Committee. So if we are the indication of the majority, you would certainly see a lot more bills passed, but unfortunately, we are in a very small minority in the General Assembly. But anyway, the other bills that I worked on this year, and I know we haven't talked a lot about elections generally, other than talking about bipartisan reforms needed for redistricting, which I certainly support as well. And incidentally, the University of Virginia has a program called Sorensen Institute. Some of our folks from that organization are leading a statewide effort in a nonpartisan way, including people like former Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling and many others, joining forces to raise the awareness so that by 2021, which is the next redistricting round, that we will hopefully be able to push a grassroots effort to get a nonpartisan redistricting done, take that power outside of the partisan races and that fit into the citizens and experts who can actually draw the lines based on what makes sense, not based on who you want to win the election. I'm part of that effort as well, so we'll be working on that over the next few years. But on elections, there are 2 bills of somewhat significance that you might want to keep in mind. One is for military absentee ballots that we've always had an issue with. We passed the bill this year in a bipartisan way. Toddy Puller and the Senate and some of us in the House worked to make sure that the absentee ballots that come from the military are studied, and that if to the extent that we're allowed to use electronic means so that internet voting could be a possibility for those folks that physically can't mail these ballots in. So we're looking at that. We took a step on that. I actually had a bill that surprisingly passed, which is, think of it this way, as a Democrat, if you introduce a bill that makes it easier for people to vote, that bill doesn't go anywhere beyond the subcommittee. But I was actually able to get a bill passed this year because we found inconsistencies in the way absentee ballot envelopes are treated. When somebody mails it from overseas based on federal law, even if there's some rips in the envelope and such on the inside, as long as it's been signed and what have you, they counted that ballot. But the same thing happened in domestic, where you got the mail got lost in a snowstorm or rain or got mud on and the envelope wasn't sealed quite properly, it was tossed. And so we were treating military absentee ballots differently than domestic ballots. I fixed that problem using some of our friends here who really helped us. So now we're going to be treating both of those types of envelopes the same way so that all those votes will be counted. And then we had a couple other bills that I'll just mention. I had a bill that would deal with creating a new study on how we handle dementia issues and memory care, and to make sure that our folks who are living longer now are at the same time having the less types of healthcare needs that they might have in the past as far as physical needs, but you still have mental needs. And so we put together a task force to look at the dementia issues, and so they'll come back with some recommendations next year. And so those are some of the things that we've done, but at the end of the day, none of what we've done this year, the 1,000 or 1,500 bills that we've passed, passed and we've worked on, none of that pales, is as important, pales in comparison to the magnitude and the importance and the significance economically and otherwise of Medicaid expansion. And so we're going to do everything we can, and you've heard from our leaders like, you've heard from Dick Saslow and Jen Howell and Ken Plum and a lot of my good friends who've been really involved with this issue. We're going to do everything we can to support Medicaid expansion so that we can not only get our money's worth in Virginia and get our taxpayers' money back, but it's the right thing to do. And I know that SALT and CURE and Dr. Lau and all of our organizations will be out there. So please sign the petitions and let's get the coverage done for everybody. Thanks.